It's a pleasure to welcome you once again to this course on inferential discrete mathematics. In the last class we had an introduction to certain types of groups like abelian groups, cyclic groups. We also learnt about the concept of a subgroup. When does a subset of a group form a subgroup? We introduced the two condition test and the one condition test to find out whether a subset can actually form a subgroup. We also had a look at an important theorem called as the Lagrange's theorem, which brings about the connection between the number of elements in a group and the number of elements in a subgroup. Further, we also discussed the order of a group, the order of an element. We saw a lot of properties based on the order of an element in a group, and we also talked about one problem towards the end of last class. That problem is the one that you see on your screens. We showed that all cyclic groups are abelian, and I gave an exercise asking you to determine whether all abelian groups will also be cyclic, or in other words, what about the converse of the given statement. The given statement says if G is cyclic, G will definitely be abelian. But what about the converse? If G is abelian, will G also be cyclic? We are discussing the true nature of the converse of the given statement. If you have worked out, if you have tried to prove this, you will see that this is not the case. Primarily because what we saw at the last of towards the end of the previous lecture is that the statement is a conditional, and we know that a conditional statement is never equivalent to its converse. Now what we see below is the converse. The conditional statement and its converse can never be true. Probably if a group G is not abelian, G cannot be cyclic, because a conditional is always equivalent to its contrapositive. The contrapositive is this: take any non-abelian group, it will never be cyclic, but you pick an abelian group, it need not be cyclic. The answer is the converse need not be true. Need not be true. There may be some groups which are both abelian and cyclic, but just because a group is abelian, you cannot show that the group is also cyclic. A counter example to that is the group that we discussed in a previous class. We introduced a group with the operation being the multiplication modulo 8. We had 4 elements in the group, and I wanted you to check whether this forms a group. We exactly saw yesterday that these 4 elements under the given operation of the multiplication modulo 8 do actually form a group. We can also verify it once again here. They do form a group. However, this group is not cyclic. This group is abelian. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 is 7 modulo 8. 5 times 3 is also 15, which is also 7 modulo 8, and this can be checked for all pairs of elements from the group. However, this group is not abelian. This group is not cyclic, beg your pardon. This group is not cyclic because you will not be able to identify any element that's a generator of this group. How do you deal with generators? That we saw this last class also. There is one element which generates every element of the group. You keep writing powers of the element, you get every element of the group. You cannot locate such an element in this group. That is not possible at all. Why? I will give you an example. 3 power 1 is 3. When you multiply 3 with 3 again, you are going to get 9, but 9 is 1 modulo 8. 3 power 3 will be 1 times 3 again, that is going to be 3. So you keep writing powers of 3, you will keep getting 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, so on and so forth. The other two elements, namely 5 and 7, cannot be generated from 3. The status is the same with 5. 5 power 1 is 5, 5 power 2 is 25, but 25 is 1 modulo 8, so 5 power 2 is 1. 5 power 3 again will be 125, which is 5 modulo 8, 125 is 120 plus 5, so 5 power 4 will once again be 1. You keep generating powers of 5, you will keep getting 1 5 1 5 1 5 again and again. So they will never generate the other two elements 3 and 7. The same happens with 7. 7 power 1 is 7, 7 power 2 is 49, which is 1 modulo 8, 7 power 3 is again 343, which is 7 modulo 8, 7 power 4 is again 1 modulo 8. So none of the 4 elements generates the entire group 1 3 5 7, and hence this group, despite being abelian, is only abelian and nothing more. This cannot be a cyclic. All abelian groups are not cyclic. That's the problem I wanted to discuss with you. All cyclic groups are abelian, but the converse is not true. The converse need not be true for every group. There may be some groups which are also abelian and cyclic, but it may not be the case every time, and the example is there on your screens. Proceeding further, we will discuss a couple of problems before we move to the next concept on the coset of a subgroup. The first problem that we will discuss is to prove or disprove whether the set of all integers forms a group with respect to the operation called subtraction. Remember, any algebraic system can be called as a group if it satisfies 4 conditions, the first being closure, then associative, identity, and inverse. These are the 4 conditions to be met for an algebraic system to be called as a group. However, let us see what happens if we are considering the set of all integers and the operation called subtraction. Subtraction is of course a binary operation. You need 2 operands to perform this operation. So a minus b, you need a and b. So it is still a binary operation. Let us see what happens. The set is obviously closed. The set of all integers is closed under subtraction, because you subtract 2 integers, you will get only an integer back. So it is closed under subtraction, but we will see that this operation is not associative. This operation is not associative, since let us pick 3 integers and check if the associative property is observed here. I discussed this in the previous class also. 2 minus of minus 2 is what we get, and this is minus 1 minus 5. You will get 4 on one end and minus 6 on the other end. They are not the same, and therefore this algebraic system fails to be a group. Leave alone identity, leave alone inverse, it is not even associative. So this is not even a semi group. The set of all integers under subtraction is not even a semi group. Forget about monoid or a group. You don't even have to verify the 3rd and 4th conditions. It fails to be a semi group, it will obviously fail to be a monoid and also fail to be a group. That is the end of story. The set of all integers cannot form a group. How about real numbers? The next problem wants you to discuss whether this algebraic system built on the set of all real numbers and the operation of division, can it form a group? The same problem again. You divide 2 real numbers, it is alright, you divide 2 real numbers, the result will be a real number provided you do not divide by 0. So the first consideration we will have to make is consider all real numbers except 0, because you cannot divide by 0. Division by 0 is prohibited, and we are about to see why is it so. So let's consider the set of all non-zero real numbers and perform the operation of division. Once again, division is a binary operation. You need two numbers to perform division. So division is an operation, all right, that can be defined, and as long as you are considering non-zero real numbers, the set will be closed under division. You divide two real numbers, you are not supposed to get, you will not get an imaginary number. So it is obviously, the set is obviously closed under division. However, like we saw in the previous problem, this operation fails to be associative. 2 by 3 by 5 and 2 by 3 by 5, they are not the same, they are different. This is different from this one, they are not one and the same. That is because the operation of division is not associative. That is why we will restrict our binary operations primarily to addition and subtraction. For that matter, any subtraction is read as a plus of minus b. You are not subtracting b from a, however you are adding a with the additive inverse of b. Similarly, you will never divide a by b, instead you will multiply a by the multiplicative inverse of b. So subtraction is not looked at as a separate operation, it is a related operation which can be written in terms of addition, and division is not looked at as a separate operation, it is an operation that is closely related with multiplication, and that is how we will proceed forward. There is no separate operation called addition, subtraction. You will never do 5 minus 7. What you are doing is adding minus 7 to 5, that is what you are trying to do. Therefore, there are no, when it comes to groups, when it comes to rings, when it comes to other algebraic systems, you do not have 4 basic operations, it is only 2, only addition and multiplication. The other 2 operations are related to these 2. That is the point I wanted to make with these 2 questions. Proceeding further, the next problem is to show whether the set of all integers which are obtained as reminders when you divide them by 7 form a cyclic group under the addition modulo 7. We know what addition modulo is. You add the 2 numbers, if the sum is less than 7 you return it as it is, if it is more than 7 then you divide and return the remainder. To check if this actually is the case, we will have to construct something called as the Cayley's table. We saw that in the last class, how to construct the Cayley's table. So let us write down all the 7 elements of the set. You have 0 through 6, you have 0 through 6. Now let us perform the operation of addition modulo 7. The first column and the first row are pretty easy to fill up because you are just adding 0 everywhere, so you will get the same elements again. Second row, 1 with 1 gives you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 with 6 is supposed to give you 7, but that 7 is a 0 because 7 leaves a remainder of 0 when you divide by 7. 2 with 1 is 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 with 5 is 7, but 7 again gives you a 0. 2 with 6 is 8, 8 gives you a 1. 4, 5, 6, 3 and 7, 3 and 4 should give you a 7, that is a 0. 8 is 1, 9 is 2. 4 and 1 is 5, 6, 0, 1, 2 and 3, 6, 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now out of this table you can easily identify that the set is closed under the operation of addition modulo. The result of any 2 operations does not go outside the set, and therefore the set is closed. And since what we are doing is a modified form of addition, it is easy to observe that the operation is also associative. You do not have to worry about the operation being associative, it is in fact associative. and the element 0 is your identity element. The element 0 is your identity element. You add 7 with 0, you get 7 back, 3 with 0, you get 3 back, so on and so forth. So 0 is your identity. And what about the inverses? The inverse of 1 is that number which returns as 0 when you add it with 1, and that is 6. 1 with 6 gives 0, 2 with 5 gives 0, 3 with 4 gives 0, 4 with 3 gives 0, 5 with 2 gives 0, and 6 with 1 gives 0. So the inverse of 6 is 1 and vice versa. So if this is A, this is A inverse. Inverse of 2 is 5 and vice versa. 3 is 4 and vice versa. So you have inverse for all elements of the group. 0 is its own inverse obviously. So you have inverse element for every element of the group. Therefore this is actually a group. But that's not what we were asked to find out. We were asked to prove or disprove whether this group is cyclic. Let's recall the definition of a cyclic group. A group is cyclic if all elements of the group can be generated by repeating an operation on one single element. Now what is that special element going to be? If there is one such element, even one, you don't even have to have more than one. Even if there is one such element with such a nice property, we can call this group as a cyclic group. That element happens to be 2. Let's check what happens if we write 2 repeatedly, adding it with it every time. 2 raised to 1 is 2, you get 2 back. 2 raised to 2 is 2 plus 2. This doesn't imply multiplication, the operation is only addition. That's 4. 2 power 3 is 2 plus 7 plus 2 plus 7 plus 2, which is 6, and 2 power 4 is added 4 times, that's going to be 8, but 8 is 1. 2 power 5 is which is 10, and 10 is 3. 2 power 6 is 3, 5 and 6. That's going to give you 12, but 12 is 5, and 2 power 12 leaves a remainder of 5 when you divide it by 7, and 2 power 7 is 2 added with itself 7 times, and that will happen to be 0, because when you add 2 so many number of times, you are bound to get 14, 3, 6 and 14, and 14 actually goes to 0. So now you see that you have a 1. Now let's count how many elements you have. You have 1, you have 2, you have 3, you have 4, you have 5, you have 6 and you have 0. All 7 elements that are part of the group are obtained by repeatedly performing the same operation on 2. What does this mean? This means that the entire group is generated by this element called 2, or 2 generates the group. 2 generates Z7 plus 7. Therefore the group is cyclic. The group happens to be a cyclic group, because you can find one element which can generate every other element. Interestingly, not only 2, 1 also generates the group, 3 also generates the group, 4 generates, 5 generates, 5 and 6, all non-zero elements of the group do generate the entire group on Z7 plus 7. I would want you to think about why this is happening, because this will not be the case always. In the last class we had a look at the group Z8 plus 8. We had a look at Z8 plus 8 and we saw that Z8 plus 8 is actually a cyclic group, but not all elements generated, only the elements 1, 3, 5 and 7 generated the group. But here every non-zero element is generating the entire group. I would want you to think about this. Why is this observation happening? I'll give you the answer shortly. So we have shown that it is a cyclic group. Next is to list all subgroups of Z6 plus 6. Now Z6 plus 6 is going to contain the elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. The operation that is performed is going to be addition modulo 6. Now how many subgroups will exist here? How many subgroups may exist? You cannot just explore and think of all possible combinations, but this is where Lagrange's theorem will help us. Lagrange's theorem, which we discussed in the previous class, told us that if ever H is a subgroup of G, then order of H will divide order of G. So whenever there are subgroups of H, this thing should be observed. So it's easy to find out what can be the orders of such groups. Because G contains 6 elements, any subgroup of G should contain either 1 element or 2 elements, 3 elements or 6 elements, because only these 4 are the divisors of 6. 4 doesn't divide 6, 5 doesn't divide 6 and no greater number divides 6. Only these 4 numbers divide 6. So any subgroup of G should contain either 1 element or 2 elements or 3 elements or 6 elements. Let's find out what they are. This subgroup containing exactly 1 element is your trivial subgroup 0, because as I told you, the identity element will always form a subgroup of G star. That's going to be a trivial subgroup, and this subgroup containing 6 elements is G itself. You take all 6 elements, that can be the only other subgroup of order 6, because you are supposed to include all elements, and that is only possible if you include the entire group. So these are 2 subgroups, and we have also said that we will have 2 other subgroups, one of order 2 and the other of order 3. If you can spend some time on this, you will find out that a subgroup H1 containing 0 and 3 is actually a subgroup. This is a subset, that's all right, but you will also see that it is a subgroup because it's going to be closed under addition. I told you the one condition test to find out whether a subset is a subgroup. You will see that this subset actually forms a subgroup, because first of all it's closed. You add 3 any number of times, 3 will only give you a 3 back or a 0 back. So you will only get back either 3 or 0, both of which are already included in the subset. So the subset is obviously closed under the operation of addition modulo 6. Further, we will have to verify only one more condition, the inverse of the element, and that is also pretty obvious, because 0 being the special identity element is its own inverse, and similarly 3 is also its own inverse. So 0 and 3 are their own inverses, so inverse of every element also is present within the same subset. Therefore H1 is a subgroup of Z6 plus 6, and we verified it using Lagrange's theorem. Proceeding further, H2, let us consider H2 as 0, 2 and 4. Now you will see that this is also a subgroup of Z6 plus 6. This is a subgroup of Z6 plus 6, because what is happening here is you are collecting all even integers and putting them inside a box. So you keep adding integers, you are going to get even integers back. 2 and 2 is going to give you 4, which is part of the set. So 2 plus 4 is already there. 2 plus 4 is 6, which is 0. 2 plus 2 is 4, which is already there. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6, which is actually 0 again. And when you add it 4 times, going to get 8, and 8 is 2. So you're going to get the elements again and again and again within the same set, and this shows that the set is closed under addition. What more, 0 is its own inverse, 4 and 6 are inverses of each other. 4 plus 2 is going to give you 0, 2 plus 4 is also going to give you 0, 4 and 6 are inverses of each other. So the subset is closed and the subset has an inverse for every element, therefore this is a subgroup. Now I may give you an exercise on this, you can break sweat over this, you will never be able to find out one more subgroup of the same group G. It has to be the trivial subgroup or the entire group or this or this. You can't find a subgroup that is other than these 4. Only these 4 subgroups are possible for the given group G. Next one is once again a prove or disprove question to see whether the set of elements 1, 3, 7 and 9 actually forms a subgroup, a cyclic group under the binary operation of multiplication modulo 10. We only recently we had a look at a group where the operation was multiplication modulo 8. This time around let's see what happens if we do multiplication modulo 10. Let's check it out. You're going to have 4 elements in the set, 1, 3, 7 and 9, 4 along the line, 4 across the line. The operation is x10, multiplication modulo 10. So 1 and 1 is going to give you 1, 3, 7 and 9, you don't have to worry about them. 3 and 3 is going to give you 9, 3 and 7 is 21, but 21 is greater than 10. So you divide 21 by 10 and you will get 1 as the remainder. 3 times 9 is 27. And 27 is 7 more than 20, that's 7 again. 7 times 3 is 1, 7 times 7 is 49, and 49 leaves the remainder of 9 when you divide it by 10, and 7 times 9 is 63, which leaves the remainder of 3 when you divide it by 10. So 9 times 3 is 7 again, 9 times 7 is 3 again, 9 times 9 is 81, and 81 leaves the remainder of 1. So that is the Cayley's table for the given algebraic system. So obviously you see that the set is closed under the multiplication modulo 10, so you don't have to worry about being closed and the set being closed, and the operation involved is multiplication, which we know to be associative, so you don't have to worry about the associative nature. You already have the special element 1, which is the multiplicative identity, so you don't have to worry about the first 3 properties. We are bothered only about the last property. What's the inverse of 3? You see that 3 times 7 is 1. You see that 3 times 7, give me a second. Three times 7 is 1. So you multiply 3 with 7 to get 1, which means 7 and 3 are inverses of each other, and 9 is its own inverse. 9 times 9 is 1. So it is actually a group. It's closed. You have an associative star, you have the multiplicative E, and you also have the inverse for every element of the group. Therefore it is actually a group. But is it also a cyclic group? We are interested in also exploring the possibility where the system is actually cyclic. Let's recall what cyclic group means. You should be able to generate every element using one element, and can that element be 3? 3 power 1 is 3, 3 square is 9, which is part of it, and 3 cube is 81, and 81 leaves the remainder of 1. 81 leaves the remainder of 1 when you divide it by 10. Sorry, 3 power 4 is 81, 3 power 4 is 81 leaving a remainder of 1, and 3 power 3 is 27 leaving a remainder of 3. leaving the remainder of 7. So 1 is 3 power 4, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 is 3 power 1, 9 is 3 power 2, that is 3 times 3, and 7 is 3 cube, 3 times 3 times 3. So every element is generated using the same element 3, and you can also find out that 7 also generates. 7 power 1 is 7, 7 power 2 is 49, which leaves a remainder of 9, 7 power 3 is 343, which leaves a remainder of 3, and 7 power 4 is what is 7 power 4? 1 0 2301 2401, that leaves a remainder of 1 when divided by 10. So all elements of the group are also generated using powers of 7. So both 3 and 7 generate the given group. Therefore it is actually a cyclic group also. It is not just a semi group, not just a monoid, not just a group, it is also a cyclic group. And just because it is cyclic, it is also an abelian group, just by the result that we saw in the last class. With that set of revision problems, we are free to move to today's class, the next topic, the topic on cosets. Now cosets are like the derivatives of subgroups. You take a subgroup, you play around with it, you get cosets, and it's basically a set. That's why you have the name as coset, but it's not just a set, it is a coset, as in it is always related to one more set and they are cosets of each other. The formal definition for a coset is on your screens. Let G star be a group and H denote any subgroup of G star, then we can observe that the result of multiplying one element A with every element of H is what you call as the left coset. When you multiply from the left, you call it as a left coset. When you multiply from the right, when you operate from the right, you call it as the right coset. So you take any subgroup of any group, pick any random element of the group, operate it from the left to get a left coset, operate it from the right to get a right coset. To understand this better, let us consider an example where we are taking the group as the set of all integers under the operation of addition. Now we know that 5z plus is also a subgroup. 5z plus set of all multiples of 5. It is definitely closed. Let us justify this. It is definitely closed because you add any two multiples of 5, you are going to get a multiple of 5 again. 10 plus 25 is 35, another multiple. 55 plus 45 is another multiple. So all of these are multiples of 5. So as long as you are staying within the set, you will also stay within the set. You will never go outside the set. The set is closed. The subset is closed. What's more interesting? It is also a subgroup, because you will find that every element has an inverse. The inverse of 5 is minus 5, because only 5 and minus 5 give you 0 when you add them. The inverse of 15 is minus 15 to give you 0. Like this, any A belonging to phi z will have its inverse as minus A belonging to the same subset phi z. So it is closed, it has an inverse for every element, and therefore 5z plus will denote a subgroup of z plus. Now let us construct a coset out of this subgroup. Now what was the definition? You take some random element from the group, operate it on the subgroup. So that is what we are trying to do here. Let us take a random element as in 1. Let us take 1 from the group and operate it on the elements of the subgroup. So when you have 1 added to every element, you have 1 minus 15, 1 minus 10, 1 minus 5, 1 plus 0, 1 plus 5, 1 plus 10, etc., so on and so forth. So you will get a set like this, minus 14, minus 9, minus 4, 1, 6, 11, 16. So this is a left coset, because you got this by adding 1 from the left. You can also construct other cosets. Let us add 2. Adding 2 will mean you have 2 minus 15, 2 minus 10, 2 minus 5, so on and so forth. It is not 2 minus 5, as I told you, it is 2 plus the minus 15, the element. So that will give you another left coset minus 13, because 2 minus 15 is minus 13. Similarly, you will also get a coset if you add 3. 3 minus 15 will be minus 12, 3 minus 10 will be minus 7, 3 minus 5 will be minus 2, 3 plus 0 is 3, 3 plus 5 is 8, 3 plus 10 is 13, 3 plus 15 is 18, so on and so forth. You will also try and see what happens if you add 4. 4 will give us a coset which is 4 times 4 plus of minus 15, 4 plus of minus 10, 4 plus 0, 4 plus minus 5, 4 plus 0, etc. That is this set, which is a left coset. And the last example, what happens if you add 5 with every element? You will get back minus 10, minus 5, 0, 5, 15, 20. So this is how you form or you build the left coset of a subgroup. You take a subgroup and pick any random element from the group, add it with every element of the subgroup. What you get as a result is a coset. Now when you add it from the left, it is the left coset. When you add it from the right, it is the right coset. What happens if you add? Let us try and do the same exercise by adding 1 from the right. It does not change by much. 2 from the right does not change. 3 from the right, it does not change. 4 from the right, the answer is the same as it was when we added it from the left. 5 from the right, it is still the same. So this is how you generate or you build, you construct the left coset and the right coset. Now we will have a look at a few properties of these cosets. The properties are very interesting and will thrill you. The first property is that any two left or right cosets will either be completely disjoint or completely identical. Now let us recall what do you mean by disjoint. Two sets are disjoint when they have no element in common. Look at this, let us compare the first two. You can't find even a single element in common. All elements are unique. When you compare 1 plus 5z and 2 plus 5z, no element is in common. The same with 1 and 3, the same with 1 and 4, the same with 1 and 5. Similarly 2 and 3, 2 and 4, 2 and 5, 3 and 4, 3 and 5, 4 and 5. You compare any two left cosets, they are completely disjoint in all these cases. Further, there also is a possibility of two cosets being completely identical. What happens if you add 6 in place of 1? When you add 6 in place of 1, you will observe that it is the same as adding 1 with 5z. So two cosets are either completely identical like 1 plus 5z, 6 plus 5z, 11 plus 5z, 16 plus 5z, or totally disjoint as in 1 plus 5z, 2 plus 5z, 3 plus 5z, etc. This is one major property. We will also have a look at this through another example. Let us consider the group Z8 plus 8. We have discussed this earlier in a different lecture where the elements are 0 through 7 and the operation is addition modulo 8. Now you can verify that 0, 2, 4, 6 is a subgroup. We in fact discussed this in the previous class. 2 and 6 are inverses of each other, 4 is its own inverse, and the set is closed. Therefore, this is in fact a subgroup. What's more interesting is it has exactly 2 cosets. Now take any element from the group, let's say 1, and add it with every element of H. 1 and 1 gives you 1, no 1 and 0 gives you 1, 1 and 2 gives you 3, 1 and 4 gives you 5, 1 and 6 gives you 7. So the coset that you have by adding 1 to the subgroup is 1, 3, 5, 7. And the same result will be obtained when you add 3. 3 plus 0 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 3 plus 6 is 9, but 9 is 1. So you get back the same 4 elements. Even when you have 5 added, 5 plus 0 is 5, 5 plus 2 is 7, which is 1, 5 plus 4 is 9, which is 3, 5 plus 6 is 11, which is 5 again. You will get back only these elements again and again. Same happens with 7 plus 8h. So all these are identical. They are one and the same. Only the order of the elements matter, but the contents of the set are the same. However, 1 plus h and 2 plus h are totally disjoint. Look at the set 1 plus h, it has 1, 3, 5, 7. Look at the set 2 plus h, it has 2, 4, 6, 0. Totally disjoint. There is not even a single element that is common, and that is what we are trying to establish when we say any 2 cosets are totally disjoint or totally identical. Either one element is this, either you have every element in common, or there are 0 elements in common. One more example can be the set 1 minus 1, which is a subgroup of the group 1 minus 1 comma I minus I. It is obviously a subgroup because 1 is its own inverse, minus 1 is its own inverse, and the set is always closed under usual multiplication. Now let us consider the coset obtained by adding I or multiplying I with this. I with 1 gives you I with minus 1 gives you minus I, but it is also the same as the coset obtained by getting minus I multiplied with h. Minus I with 1 is minus I with minus 1 is plus I. You get back the same set of elements, so they are totally identical, but they are disjoint from the coset obtained by multiplying minus 1 with h. Minus 1 with 1 is minus 1, minus 1 with minus 1 is plus 1. Look at these two, not even a single element in common. That is what we tried to establish here. Either all elements are in common or no element in common. They are totally disjoint or totally identical. And this is once again the same example that we discussed some time back, but this time under a different property. The property is that if the subgroup is finite, if H is finite, the number of, the next property that we will discuss is that the number of elements in a given coset is always the same as the number of elements in the subgroup which generates the coset. The example that we will see to support this property is that this group on Z8 plus 8, we have already seen that H actually forms a subgroup of Z8 plus 8, and let us consider one coset 1 plus H and another coset 2 plus H. It is obvious that both have only 4 elements, which is equal to the number of elements in H. So the number of elements in any coset will be the same as the number of elements in the subgroup that generates it. You can also have one more example where we consider the group as 1 minus 1 I minus I, the 4th roots of unity, and a subgroup 1 comma minus 1. A coset can be generated as I times H, which is I comma minus I, which is exactly the same number of elements, has the same number of elements as 1 minus 1. They always have the same number of elements. The number of elements in H is 2, and the same is with the number of elements in the cosets that are generated from H. And the next one is any 2 cosets of a subgroup will always have the same cardinality. It is not just that number of elements in the coset will be equal to the number of elements in the subgroup, the number of elements in 2 cosets will also be the same. H has 2 elements, the coset I with H has 2 elements, the coset minus 1 with H also has 2 elements. So that is a bijection. A bijection means two sets are said to have a bijection between them when they have a one-to-one onto mapping defined between them, or in other words the two sets will have the same number of elements. That is what we see here. The same is observed with the other example also. And finally, a coset generated by a subgroup will be the same as the subgroup only when the element which generates it is part of the subgroup. To help you understand this better, let us consider the subgroup of 1 minus 1 I minus I in H 1 minus 1. Now let us generate two different cosets. One coset where we multiply with I times H becomes I comma minus I, which is not equal to H. The property establishes the reason because as I does not belong to H, you do not see I in H, I has only 1 and minus 1. That is why the coset generated using I is not the same as H. On the other hand, let us have a look at 1 times H or minus 1 times H. Since minus 1 is an element belonging to the subgroup H, the coset generated using minus 1 as an element is also the same as H. They are identical. So a subgroup and a coset are the same. If AH is equal to H, then that is only because you have generated the coset using an element from the subgroup itself. More examples of the same property: 2 plus H, 4 plus H and 6 plus H are the same as H because 2, 4 and 6 belong to H. 1 plus H, 3 plus H, 5 plus H and 7 plus H, none of them are the same as H because 1, 3, 5 and 7 do not belong to H. Finally, that is what we also saw in the subgroup with the set of all integers. 1 plus 5z, 2 plus 5z, 3 plus 5z and 4 plus 5z are not the same as 5z because 1, 2 and 3 do not belong to 5z. On the other hand, 5 plus 5z, 0 plus 5z, 10 plus 5z etc. are the same as 5z because those elements belong to the subgroup H. So these are the 4 main important properties of the cosets generated using a subgroup of a group H, of a group G star. Now moving further, we will have a look at a very interesting concept, the concept behind a normal subgroup. Earlier we classified certain groups as being cyclic and abelian, but a similar classification is also possible about a subgroup. We can also call a subgroup as a normal subgroup if it meets certain conditions. There is exactly only one condition that is left to be checked, and the condition is this: if every coset of a subgroup is also a right coset, if every left coset is also a right coset, then the subgroup is what we call as a normal subgroup. Remember once again, the left coset and the right coset should have the same set of elements. To give you an example, let us consider the subgroup 5z and the group z plus. We have already listed 5 different subgroups of 5z which are left cosets and 5 different cosets of 5z which are right cosets. Now you see that they are one and the same. 1 plus 5z and 5z plus 1 have the same set of elements. Obviously this is because the operation of addition is commutative, but we see that the left coset and the right coset are identical, and that is why 5z plus is a normal subgroup of z plus. It does not matter from which side you add the number, the cosets do not differ in this example. You can also give one more example with the 4th roots of unity we saw that 1 minus 1 is a subgroup. Let's try and generate a coset by multiplying I from the left as well as from the right. The left coset is I minus I, the right coset is also I minus I. They don't change, they don't differ, they are the same. The order may differ but the elements are the same. The same happens with minus I. Minus I with H gives you minus I comma plus I from the left. H with minus I also gives you plus I comma minus I from the right. So even when you change the order in which you form the coset is not different. The left coset and the right coset are identical, and that is why 1 minus 1 is actually a normal subgroup of the fourth roots of unity under multiplication. Let's consider one last example. Let's consider the group under addition modulo 8. It will contain 7 non-zero elements and 1 zero element, 8 elements in all, and this is the Cayley's table of the group. Now out of this, let's consider one subgroup 0, 2, 4 and 6. This is easily a subgroup of Z8 plus 8, primarily because it's closed. The Cayley's table will help you understand that, and 2 and 6 are inverses of each other and 4 is its own inverse. So 0, 2, 4, 6 is a subgroup of Z8 plus 8, but we will also see that it is a normal subgroup. Let's form a coset using an element 1. Let's add 1 to every element from the left. 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 plus 2 is 3, 1 plus 4 is 5, 1 plus 6 is 7. That is a left coset for you. Now if we add 1 from the right, you still have 0 plus 1, that is 1, 2 plus 1, that is 3, 4 plus 1, that is 5, and 6 plus 1, that is 7. That is again a right coset, and you see that the left coset and the right coset are one and the same. This shows that the set 0, 2, 4, 6, it's not only a subset, not only a subgroup, is also a normal subgroup, because every left coset is same as its own right coset. If you explore further and look at the second subgroup like 0, 4, you will also see that it is also a normal subgroup of Z8 plus 8. So there is a pattern across all three examples that we saw. The first example was 5Z and Z. 5Z happened to be a normal subgroup of Z, and then we saw 1 comma minus 1 with the fourth roots of unity, which is once again a normal subgroup of the fourth roots of unity, and now we saw 0, 2, 4 and 6, which is once again a normal subgroup of Z8 plus 8. What is common across all these? All these groups are also abelian. So it is not very special, because the group we have considered is abelian, which means the operation is commutative, so the order does not matter when you form the cosets, and therefore every subgroup is also normal. So that is the first observation we make about normal subgroups. If the group is abelian, then every subgroup is also a normal subgroup. Every subgroup is a normal. No matter what subgroup you generate, if the group is abelian, the subgroup will automatically by default also be a normal subgroup. But this discussion of normal subgroups is not restricted to only abelian groups. I would like to give you one example where the group is non-abelian, but it has a subgroup which is normal. That is based on the group of quaternions. The group of quaternions were actually discovered or invented by the mathematician Sir Hamilton while he was trying to develop the idea behind complex numbers. Sir Hamilton devised this set of elements, 8 elements in all, which forms a group under a particular operation. Now this operation is not uniform across every element, it is different for different elements. Now whenever you are operating with 1 or minus 1, the operation is as simple as multiplication. So 1 with 1 is 1, 1 with minus 1 is minus 1, 1 with I is I, minus I, j minus j, k minus k, etc. there is no new operation involved. The same happens with minus 1. But when you multiply I or j or k, minus I or minus j or minus k amongst themselves, then the operation is slightly different. So there is no clear rule to multiply I with I in ordinary multiplication. Only because of this, Sir Hamilton developed this idea where he said I star I will be minus 1, and this gave rise to the idea behind complex numbers. Similarly, j star j will be minus 1, k star k will be minus 1. So I star I is not 1, I star I is minus 1. He also defined one more equation where he said I star j star k is minus 1, and this can be understood using the 3 vector system. I dot j is k, but j dot I is minus k. J dot k is I, but k dot j is minus I. This is what you might have learned as a vector product. The dot product, we'll use the same here. K dot I is j, but I dot k is minus j. I dot k is minus j. So using all this, Sir Hamilton constructed this group of quaternions. On your screens you see the complete Cayley's table, and you will see that the set is closed. The result of the operation of any two elements stays within the set. You also have the multiplicative identity in 1, and I and minus I are inverses of each other, j and minus j are inverses of each other, k and minus k are inverses of each other. So this actually forms a group that is first of all a semi group, further it is also a monoid because of the presence of 1, and every element also has its own inverse, therefore it is actually a perfect group. But the difference is this group is not abelian, as we saw here. J dot k is I, but k dot j is minus I. The two elements are different, so when you change the order, the answer changes. The group cannot be abelian, is not abelian. This group is not abelian. But what is surprising is, what is most surprising is, out of this non-abelian group, we will be able to generate a subgroup that is normal. So far, all examples that we have seen for normal subgroups are built from groups which are abelian, operations which are commutative. A star B has always been equal to B star A. But now for the first time in this set of lectures, we are going to define a group that is not abelian, but we will also identify a subgroup of this group which will turn out to be a normal subgroup. This is one of the rare occasions where you will be able to identify such an observation in this set of lectures. Shortly, which may be probably in the next class, I will also define another non-abelian group for which there is a normal subgroup. So you might not find these examples generally available, but this is available here for you in the series of lectures. Let us consider one set of elements, namely 1 minus 1 I minus I out of this set of quaternions. Clearly they form a group because it is actually closed. Let us draw the Cayley's table. You will see that the result of the operation of any two elements is contained within the set H. So it is always closed under the operation star, and since multiplication is commutative, since multiplication is associative, you will see that the second condition is also satisfied. But you do not have to do all of that for a subgroup. You just have to verify two conditions. Number one, it must be closed, which you have already seen, and number two, it is about whether every element has its own inverse. Minus 1 has its inverse in minus 1, I has its inverse in minus I, minus I has its inverse in plus I. So it has the ID element, it is closed, it is also having an inverse element for every element, therefore it is actually a subgroup of Q8. Q8, the group of quaternions. Now let's try and generate a coset of this subgroup. Now I told you generating a coset is not difficult. You will just have to operate some random element on all elements of the subgroup. Now let's pick that random element to be j. Let's try and find what happens if I operate j with every element of H. J star 1 is j, j star minus 1 is minus j, j star I is k, j star I is in fact minus k because I star j gives you k and j star I gives you minus k, and j star minus I is minus of minus k, which is plus k. So this is a left coset of H. Now let's try and do the same from the right. Let's multiply j with every element of H from the right. 1 star j is j, minus 1 star j is minus j, I star j is k, and minus I star j is minus k. So even though the order is slightly messed up, these two sets are one and the same. The left coset that you constructed is same as the right coset that you have also constructed. Therefore H forms a normal subgroup, and it's not only for j. You can pick another element. Let's say you pick k, the same thing will happen. You pick minus k, you will see the same thing happening. You will pick minus j, the same thing will happen. So for any random element that you select from the group, this subgroup will always have its left coset and right coset to be identical, and that is why this is one of the very rare cases where the group is non-abelian, but you are able to identify a subgroup that is normal. So with that we wrap up today's class. We have had a look at a few problems testing the fundamentals of groups, cyclic groups, etc. We have also had a look at what is the relation between abelian groups and cyclic groups. We have introduced the concept of cosets. We have discussed the properties of cosets. We have introduced the concept of normal subgroups, and we have given too many examples. We have exactly given 3 examples of groups which are different, having subgroups which are also normal subgroups. Towards the end we have also had a look at one group which is non-abelian having a subgroup which is perfectly normal. With that we wrap up this section on cosets and normal subgroups. In the next class we will introduce another non-abelian group which will have a normal subgroup. That group is very special, and we will earmark one full lecture for that group alone. That we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.